Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Your water touches every acre that you spray. Do you know if your water is what's blocking your results? Rod here at A Better Way to Farm, where we increase yields and improve profits. As we were talking about weed control last night, Karen and I were sitting there and talking about some of the growers that we work with and some of the results that we're getting. Some of the calls that we're getting are very interesting. Had one particular grower call me and he said, I've been testing my pH like you were talking about in my water, and my water's testing 8.5. Had another guy call in and he said, I'm testing my pH and it's at 7.5. And so they were talking about using an acidifier to get that pH down, because most of your chemicals, you need to check the label, but most of your chemicals need to be sprayed off at a pH of about 6.0. And most people's water is 7.5 and on up. We see water as high as 10 or 10.5. And remember, guys, pH is powers of hydrogen. So when you move from 7, which is neutral, to 8, which is just a little bit above neutral, right? It's 10 times more alkaline. If you move from 8 to 9, it isn't 20 times more alkaline, it's 100. So 7 to 8 is 10 times, 8 to 9 is 100 times, 9 to 10, 1,000 times more alkaline than 7. And that's really important because that high pH starts killing off the active ingredient in your chemicals. It's especially important in your fungicides and your insecticides. Caveat, I believe most of the sulfonylurea products need to be sprayed off at a pH of 7. Always check your chemical label. But guys, if we're going to spend the money on the chemicals, does it make sense? We want to give them the best chance that we can in order that they can work. That's what we're after, trying to make sure that they're going to work the best that they have chance that they have. And when we get that pH down where it needs to be, that's really important because that's a critical component of keeping that active ingredient active and keeping those chemicals working and doing what we want them to do. So that's a key part. Now, the key is people say, well, what are we going to use? I've got guys say, well, we use citric acid. Citric acid is really cheap, and it is. And it does lower the pH of the water. However, it's a temporary deal. It drops it down, but then almost immediately it comes back up. It starts creeping back up and faster until it goes back to where it was. And all of a sudden, we're not getting the results that we wanted. And if we say, well, I'll just use a lot more citric acid because it's cheap. Guys, good and cheap are not brothers. They are not even cousins. Let's go in there with something. Let's find an acidifier that drops that pH down and holds it at that level. Let's take it down to 6. Now, let me say this, like the label on the product that we have says, I think it says 3 to 9 ounces. In other words, for every 100 gallon of solution, for every point pH I need to drop, it can take anywhere from 3 ounces of the product to 9 ounces. And one of my growers I was talking to the other day, I was just sitting here looking at his order. He's very serious about getting good weed control. So what he did was he started experimenting. And after multiple tests, he figured out that he's got water that's harder to adjust. There are different mineral contents, different factors within that water. And so some of it you could lower at one point with only 3 ounces of our product. His was going to take the full 9 ounces. And he placed a very large order because he knew that it was going to take a lot of the acidifying product in order to get his pH correctly. But he also knew where he was going to spend over $100,000 on chemicals this year, that spending an extra $10,000 to make sure they work seemed like a pretty good investment. And so when he went in there and did that, he's like, all right, I put in this much, it didn't do it. This much didn't do it. This much did. So he ran that multiple times, figured it out, and got the acidifier in. He's got it on hand. He's ready to go. And so one of the things that we would just ask that you guys consider is coming up with a way, a pH meter from Amazon, $65 to $95, and they're digital. Yeah, you can get the little strips, and you can try to decide, is it orange or is it pink? Is it blue or is it purple? What shade of blue and purple is it? What's my pH? Or for just a mere less than $100 bill, you can get a digital pH meter that you actually just push the button, dip it in the water, and boom, it tells you exactly what your pH is, and we highly recommend that. And so we would encourage you to do that. Just one of the tips that we can use on spraying, one of the things that you can do to make it more effective, to be more advanced in your weed kill. I heard somebody the other day talking about one of the reasons that they were blaming something that I probably didn't agree with, saying this is the reason that we have resistant weeds. I believe the number one reason that we have resistant weeds is, and there's actually two, it's 1A. 1A is we have resistant weeds because we were chintzy. If it said use somewhere between 32 and 42 ounces, we all gravitated to 24 because we were getting a pretty good weed kill at 24 ounces and we were saving that $6 an acre. And I get that, $6 is $6. However, what happened was there was a certain number of weeds that survived that. And those offspring that came from that, they're more tolerant and more tolerant. And that's how we've ended up with resistant weeds, was too low of rate. The second way, 1B, if you will, is the fact that we didn't acidify the water. And even though we were using the 48 ounces that the label called for, by the time we got to the field, the active ingredient had been smoked out. And all of a sudden, although we put in 48 ounces, we were getting the equivalent of only 32 or 24. We created that resistance ourselves. So guys, here's just a little tip, something that you can do to make this work better, make your life better, because let's be honest, when we don't get a good weed control this year, we create a big problem for next year too, and probably the 6 years after that. We want to kill the weeds. This is one of the things that we can do. Always follow the label of your chemical company and see where your pH needs to be and get it down there. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and as always, we hope you're having a better day.